What do you think of this? It's probably not a fair question since you don't know where I'm actually going here, but let's compare it to this. Cura has new tree supports, and that is where we're going here. Let's look at them. This video is sponsored by PCBWay, and I will be telling you more about that later on. Tree supports have been in Cura for at least 5 years, although they were experimental for quite a bit of that time. I remember when I first hopped into 3D printing, they were still experimental then. I kind of feel like they've only just come off experimental, but it probably was in 2020 or something. Now they're part of normal supports, as you can see here. I've always been a huge fan of tree supports because I've never been a huge fan of supports on the part itself, and surprisingly you often need to support a part of the model that is over another part, meaning not directly over the build plate. This is a perfect scenario for using tree supports because the branches can reach over existing structures, which is something normal supports I suppose could, but they don't. This makes tree supports neater and in theory easier to remove. But the in theory part of that sentence is the problem. In my experience, Cura's tree supports, while they work well for support most of the time, the default settings will more often than not encapsulate a part completely. Too much support, and on more than one occasion I've had them welded on so badly that they won't separate even when I try using tools. By the way, do not use these clippers for this. That is not what these clippers are designed for. They will snap, and when they snap, the sharp end that comes off, there's photos of it hitting the ceiling. I'll see if I can find one. Probably not, but it could hit you in the eye. Don't use that. I use this spudgy thing. It's not the sharpest tool in the drawer, if you know what I mean, but it's probably about the sharpest tool you should be using for this kind of work. The best idea really is to improve the support so that you don't have to use anything at all. But yes, look at this mushroom. You will not get that support off. You can fiddle with the settings, which I've spoken about in videos in the past, and you can make the supports thinner. It's kind of a black art though. I mean, if you spend a lot of time looking at what all the settings do, then fine, but you're still working against parameters that don't necessarily directly impact the thing that you want to change, which is, quite simply, can you just not make a huge blob around my part? I want the supports, but I don't want all this stuff around it. But anyway, this video is long enough without me digressing into trying to remove supports. We want better supports that use less material, and that is how we segue straight into these brand new tree supports in this alpha release of Cura here. Let me show you the fully encapsulated default mushroom again. And now the new supports with default settings. And here's a Christmas bauble thing with the old settings on the left and the new ones on the right. And if I show you a version of the old ones that failed so you can see halfway up, you can see how much of a nightmare this would be to remove. And if you look into the new one, it just doesn't have those branches joined like that. It's night and day, quite frankly. No explanation really needed as to how much better these new supports are, but you're about to get one anyway. So there is a story as to how these new tree supports came about. They were originally a fork of Cura made by a developer by the name of Thomas Rahm, and Thomas has been working on these for around 3 years, which gives you some idea how big a project this was to get to this stage. Now the pressure is really on to cover it because, yeah, these are the same tree supports kind of, that are in the upcoming Prusaslicer release. Not exactly, but they are based on the same code. It's complicated. I can't tell you how much they're based on the same code because Prusaslicer's repository is private, but that's a whole different thing. So the best place to start if you want to understand the new changes is the GitHub repository for the fork which started it all. I will link it below. It has an extensive README which details all the features, and let's go through some of them. Okay, first up, branch angles have been improved. You used to have a single parameter for branch angle, which, if we refer to settings guide, this is a maximum angle, but as you can hopefully see here, if I set it to 85 degrees on the old version, it pretty much is always tending to use the max angle. At least it seems to, when it needs a branch from one place to another. Hopefully you can see why that isn't a great idea looking at these supports. It would be better, I guess, if you could say, I want you to use a sensible value for the branch angle, but if you really need to, like if you need to reach further, you can do something like a bit more risky, and that is what we get with the new parameters. We get preferred branch angle and max branch angle. I will set it to 30 degrees and 85 degrees to show you. I wouldn't ever recommend actually using 85, this is just for demonstration. You can see the new tree support method actually manages to use the preferred angle throughout, or at least these all look like 30-degree angles to me, which obviously is better, but that's no good. I want to see some steep angles. So here's a piece that will demonstrate that, and this is what you get. I know what your first thought is. Wait, there's a flat bit at the top. That is more than 85 degrees. That's 90 degrees. Or is it? It's not, is it? The whole piece is tipped. So that is less than 90 degrees with respect to the floor or the upright. You know what I mean? If I set the maximum to a more moderate 60 degrees, I slice again, this is what we get. I think those branches are around 60 degrees, while the ones that can be 30, they are 30. This is just a huge improvement all round. I'm sure you will agree with this. There's not really much argument that this is hugely better. Oh, and for what it's worth, this is what the old tree supports would have thought of this scenario. I think that would fail. It's too steep. Next, quick one, we have branch thickness when it hits the build plate to increase adhesion. This is limited by trunk diameter. It won't go bigger than the trunk diameter parameter, but if you have, say, trunk diameter set to 30, and you increase initial layer diameter from 0, which, as far as I could tell, means ignore the setting, to 10, let's say, you can see that you get these little feet at the bottom where it has done exactly as we're asking. Increase it more, and you get huge, thick trunks. And of course, you can limit that down, conversely, with the trunk diameter. So these two settings do interact, and that's probably worth knowing because it would be confusing if you didn't realise that. Next, this is a big one. You all see this. You ideally want less of this, I think. This is branch density. We can play around with this, and we can raise it and lower it depending on what we want to do. Maybe you do want more, maybe you want less. This parameter controls it. I'm not going to say next because it's getting boring now, right? Next. Actually, before we do that, let's do a funny segue about the sponsor of this video, which is PCBWay, who won't help you with tree supports, but they will help you with supporting the manufacture of your PCBs. Was that any good? PCBWay can make PCBs for you, thus solving the hassle of trying to make them yourself. I mean, these days the idea of making them yourself seems kind of strange. Why would you bother? Come on people, it's 2023 nearly. Etching your own PCBs seems like developing your own film. I used to do that, by the way. Anyway, ordering your own PCBs is very simple. Just upload your designs via the same files that most design software uses. The easiest way is on the quick order PCB link that you see here, and pick any options you want from the defaults, like choosing a colour, and away you go. By the way, there are absolutely loads of colours available. Here's a sample of, I think, most of them. PCBWay can also 3D print parts in a range of technologies that you do not have access to at home, including nylon MJF, which is really cool, and metal. They can also make CNC or sheet metal parts for you if you need that. Check out PCBWay in the link below in the description, and thank you PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Back to it. Tip diameter is new. I think that's fairly self-explanatory, but here you go. The last one I want to do is limit branch reach, which allows you to effectively stop the branches from reaching too far across. Like so. So, as you can see, there's also a section on the things that new tree support does better. I will highlight a couple, but you can read the rest yourself. The big two, I think, are that it uses less filament. I can show you that. Here you go. Easy. It almost always does use less filament, though, except in those cases where traditional tree support wasn't working properly. I guess having actual functional support can use more filament, but in my experience it's almost always using less while providing a better overall result. The second one is support blocked avoidance. It's quite a mouthful. With the new tree support, support avoidance is total avoidance. If you've never used support blockers, just try them. They're just blocks that you dump in the build plate and support will avoid them. The branches and trunks and base will all avoid it with this new version, so it works exactly as you would naively expect it to. This is super useful, especially if you want to, for example, with this frog here, he had this brain that is made of support that really doesn't need to be supported. If you stick a support blocker on at the top here and you just make it a bit bigger, you can resize these things. You can't really do much else with them. You can only resize them, but that fixes it. It's all good. You can also use it, for example, to move the branches away a bit, to give them some distance. Before we finish up, I also want to slide something in here at the end. Again, this is all documented, but if I show you this awkward shape here that the old tree support can't deal with, See, there's no support at the top here, and it apparently has to fall back to bridging. So, yeah, it would print, but there are scenarios where this would not be that easy. The new tree support has this extra ability to handle this kind of thing better, and the trees will go all the way up through here. It will respect the distance between the part and the branch. There is a lot more to tree supports than I have been able to cover in this video. This was probably a relatively shallow dive into tree support in general, and a lot of the points that I've talked about here I will probably cover in more detail here and there in the future, so make sure you're subscribed. But I hope it has been of some help at least, and raised some awareness of what's actually changed in this news version and why it's changed. I will be revisiting trees in the next Prusaslicer release too, presumably, whenever that might be, but I know there's a lot more other features in that new Prusaslicer, so I'll probably end up referring back to here. So if you're from the future, then hello. Will you try it out now? Will you wait for the release? Are you from the future? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.